if we can come out and get out on the other end, we tend to find purpose.
Ultimately, a big part of the program that I developed is about the fact that, unfortunately, a lot of the shit that we go through is created by ourselves.
And we all crave connection. We're communal animals.
In addition to connection, it's also exploration. Now, this is not me knocking the fellowship. I know there's lots of opinions within the recovery community when it comes to what doesn't work, etc. Based on some of the feedback that we've had from our group participants, if you're in a fellowship meeting and you share your testimony, our participants talk about the fact that it's almost like a monologue that they just keep delivering and delivering and delivering to the extent that it just becomes almost like a performance.
Jason the Chance, your host of Knocking Doors Down here, and my guest on this episode is Mark MacNicol. Mark says he's most known as a writer and director, but his real passion is exploring the way arts and creativity can be used to help people achieve more positive outcomes. And that's exactly what Mark did when he developed his unique model, Anonymous Drama, which is like drama therapy for people who usually have no interest in either. You're going to learn so much in this conversation about changing the way you think, especially the story that you are attached to about yourself that you tell yourself, and how much substance abuse impacted his family, including losing his brother, and learn how Mark was able to transcend his own victim mentality due to his childhood circumstances of financial issues, substance abuse issues, mental health issues, and more. If you want more on Mark MacNicol and his program Anonymous Drama, click the link in the podcast description. As always, thanks for tuning in to Knocking Doors Down. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube, leave a thumb up and a comment in the video, and hey, please share with someone that you know will get value out of it. And don't forget, Knocking Doors Down is also on Apple Podcast and Spotify, where you can leave a rating and a review and share the podcast with someone just the same.
Unveiling art therapy's potency in recovery. Mark MacNicol, thank you so much for joining me, good sir.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is a pleasure. You are in Glasgow. I've always wanted to go there, so I guess this is my first step to being like, I know someone there now. There's no excuse not to go.
Have you ever been to Scotland?
I have not. I've been all around Europe, but not the UK.
Never the UK? Wow.
Yeah, my experience was Heathrow. My mom and we were traveling to see family who was stationed over there in the services, and that's all we had, Heathrow. And she said, I'm at least getting you in a cab, and we're going to go see something while we have a huge layover. But that's all I've gotten, unfortunately. But it's on that list.
Good.
Mark, I wake up every day, and the first thing I do is practice gratitude. So I like to jump into my conversations that way. 3 things you're grateful for today.
So I suppose, so I've got a 5 and a 6-year-old, and a beautiful and very supportive partner. So for me, obviously, well, I suppose there are 3 things. There's the 5-year-old, the 6-year-old, and the partner. So those would be the 3 things that I would put at the top of my list.
I love it. Well, and we're going to definitely dive into how you found purpose in doing what you're doing. We were talking before we hit record, and I was very moved. Couldn't see to have my sweatshirt on here, but got chills because you shared a lot of your history and family history. And I'm always so moved by meeting individuals such as yourself that have gone through pains and through that found purpose, which for me, I don't know about you, the more I dig into my faith, spirituality, it just seems to always be a thing that's presented as it's almost like it's the only way. We're going to, no matter what, endure some stuff. We're going to endure shit. And through that, if we can come out and get out on the other end, we tend to find purpose.
Yeah, the funny thing is, when it comes to the program that we can chat about, ultimately a big part of the program that I developed over the last few years is about the fact that, unfortunately, a lot of the shit that we go through um, is created by ourselves,
Mm, mm.
you know. And I don't mean that in terms of we are to blame for anything, but one of the key elements of the program, and we work with not just people in recovery, we work in prisons, and we work with mental health groups, and basically lots of different groups. But the majority of our groups are either in recovery or in prison. Um, and one of the kind of central elements of the program is to accept. And you don't have to believe it as being true, but you have to accept the possibility of there being a conversation that's going on inside your head 24/7, which most people are not aware of, and most people think of it as their thoughts. But when you start to actually become aware of the conversation and deconstruct the conversation, unfortunately, the vast majority of it is causing us pain, suffering, distress. So when you talk about the shit and the stuff that we have to go through, life is going to do what life is going to do. And obviously, control is an illusion. We don't have any control over what happens in the next moment, but we have total control over, how we react to it, and whether or not we're going to beat ourselves up and we're going to cause ourselves additional pain and suffering. So that's a big part of the program. And we can drill into the specifics, but my lived experience when it comes to addictions, mum and dad both alcoholics, brother died of a heroin overdose, me myself combating a cocaine and cannabis addiction, and that's just the kind of the primary
Right.
family. When you move out into cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents and friends and Jesus, like not just me, but so many of us, so many. I would go as far as to say I don't know if I know anybody who's not been touched by addiction in some way, either directly or indirectly. And that's before you even start talking about the other addictions, you
Yeah.
know, like sugar and refined carbs and sex, status, money. It's a long list, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so it's something that it's something using our program, which is a kind of, we describe it as being like drama therapy for people who usually don't have any interest in drama, you know. Um, I mean, some of our participants do have an interest in creative writing or performing, etc., but most don't. I would say kind of 70, 80% have no interest in creative writing or performing. And if they get a vibe that that's what the program's about, they're going to run a mile.
Sure.
But once they start to get a sense that the program is, the focus of the program is mental health, emotional well-being, relationship with self, they become more comfortable.
Yeah.
The recovery community, of all the communities that we work with, is probably the one that is most open to, exploration,
Yeah.
which,
Well,
which is
and
great.
yeah, and that makes sense to me. I mean, I talk a lot on here and if I'm working with newcomers to recovery, a lot about it. I used to experiment with chemicals. Now I experiment with life. People that, oh, the 12 steps don't work for me or something like that. And I go, well, there's 97 other different approaches. Explore all those too. Like, it's not, oh, that didn't work, I'm done, forget it. And you were talking about story. And of course, our formative years and our life experience and all these things form stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, our worth, our values, etc. And it's kind of like, look, you can't do shit the way you used to and expect a different result. Like, you got to go try, check some things out, be open-minded, kind of close the lips sometimes and really open the ears. And it's a challenging thing. I mean, even if you're not in recovery from a substance or an addiction of any kind, like you said, there are those outliers. I know that they're real. The money, the sex, all of it, the hoarding, whatever it is, food. I mean, I don't know about there. Like, we are in a health crisis in the United States because of all the crap that is in our food and that people have become addicted to. Like, that's a proven fact that lots of people seem to want to ignore. And I want to get into that a little bit more, and I really want to dig into the program as a guy that was a drama guy, did acting, went to film school, but I want to know a little bit about Little Mark because I want to know where, drama and, theater. Before we started talking, you mentioned one of my favorite directors, Steven Spielberg, where that interest peaked for you. Because for me, I found it in childhood. Grew up in a home of addiction, grew up on a ranch property. Arts was an escape to me. Pretend, play, all those things, it was little kid creating a different world for himself.
Yeah, I think me too. And again, we spoke about the fact that my mum's been sober for 25 years, and me and my mum have got a good relationship. Obviously, it would be fair to say it's a complicated relationship because, she was an alcoholic for the first 25 years of my life. So through my childhood, obviously that was challenging for myself and Jason, my brother. But I've done a few podcasts and I've spoken about my mum, and I've spoken to my mum, and she's okay with it. She's like, she's okay with me talking about her in that period. I think she's more okay with it than I am in some respects, because when I talk about my childhood and my mum, I don't want to cause her any unnecessary distress, because at the end of the day, obviously she was struggling. She was a single parent. My father was an alcoholic too, but he wasn't home. So it was just me, mum, and Jason. And looking back on it, I remember, from a young age, having a relationship with story when it comes to, obviously television was a big thing. TV for me was my first love. It was my best friend, as is the case for probably many people in the creative sector. And not even just that. I remember playing with, cars and figures and, kind of directing things and setting up scenarios and, battlefields and stuff. And story was always there for as long as I can remember. I never considered it to be something that would be a possibility for me professionally. So I came from, quite a, I don't know what the terminology in the US would be. I mean, in the UK, we would say it was an area of high deprivation or poverty or, exclusion. I mean, obviously, you guys would call it the projects or the ghetto or whatever, but it was a rough neighborhood.
Knocking Doors Down by Carlos Vieira, now available wherever you get audiobooks.
I wasn't done partying, and I didn't want the binge to end. I think I knew that when I finally got home, I'd have to face what I had done, and I wasn't ready to do that. Being responsible for my actions wasn't something I was looking forward to. I had abandoned my wife and baby, my family, and my business. I wanted to avoid the shame of returning to what I had left behind. Even though I was not yet going home, I wasn't sure I had enough resources to continue the binge.
Click the link in the podcast description to find out more. The We're Out of Time podcast with Richard Taite, musician and social media influencer Andrea Russett.
How long you got?
As of today, 2 weeks.
Model and Instagram sensation Lacey K. Summers.
You've never done a drug or a drink, have you?
No.
The star of Netflix Tall Girl Ava Michele.
The next morning, I
found him, and
You found him?
I did find him.
The We're Out of Time podcast with the man who revolutionized addiction treatment, Richard Taite. Subscribe now on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. We'reOutOfTime.com, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
People from my background, to my knowledge, did not go into the arts. It was just, I didn't know anyone that did anything other than consume television and film. I didn't know anyone that worked in television or film. So I went through my 20s, in and out of jobs, none of which really kind of fulfilled me. And I always felt a sense of kind of dissatisfaction and aimlessness professionally. And then I think it would have been, in my 30s, early 30s, living in London at the time, working in a job in IT and telecom, sales and marketing. Writing was a hobby, and it was something that I'd done, through my 20s, writing short stories. I'd tried a couple of novels that ran out of steam. At that point, I was on novel attempt number 3, and me and my fiance at the time split up, and she was the reason that I was in London. So it was almost like pretty much immediately I knew after we split up that was an opportunity. It was a blank page. It was an opportunity for me to do something different, because there was no more. I mean, London's one of the most expensive cities in the world, so there was no more, mortgage bills, wedding to save up for, etc. So I was able to move back home to Glasgow, and I decided, I was like, okay, I'm going to move home to Glasgow. I'm going to, move into one of my family members' spare rooms. I'm going to cut my overheads to a minimum, and I'm going to become a professional writer. And that's what happened. Basically, that novel was my third attempt at a novel, and it went on to be published. It's called Coconut Badger. It's available on, available via all good bookstores. And that was the very first thing that I wrote, and that would be, what's that? That's like maybe 15 years ago. 15 years ago, that novel was the first thing that I wrote. And then I wanted to start writing for television and film. And it's interesting, the reason why I chose the novel first, as a reader, I wanted to test myself, and I thought that writing a novel would be more of a challenge than writing a television or film screenplay. Now, obviously, I went on to discover that that's not the case, and they're both, they're both equally difficult to write. But I didn't know that at that time. So I wrote the novel, and then I wanted to start writing for television or film. But I'd heard through a few people, it's as you know, it's very difficult to get into television and film.
Very.
Writing. So I heard that theatre was a lot of television and film writers came in through theatre. So they would actually, they would be in theatre writing, and that would almost be like a backdoor into television and film. So that was the route that I decided to try. But I'd never been to the theatre. I had no relationship with the theatre when I started writing my first stage play.
Wow.
Because, where I come from, nobody goes to the theatre.
Sure.
None of my friends, none of my family, none of my neighbours, etc. So I started going to as much theatre as I could go to, writing my first stage play. What I didn't anticipate was that I would fall in love with the medium of theatre, and that theatre would have a huge life-changing impact on me, both as an audience member and also as a playwright and director. So kind of two separate massive impacts on me. And that was my focus for a few years, was writing, directing, producing theatre. And then I was actually invited into a maximum security prison.
Oh, wow.
To take part in kind of applied theatre project
Yeah. Yeah.
as
Yeah.
as a playwright. Now I had experience of prisons visiting my brother Jason,
Mm.
so I'd probably been in most Scottish prisons, or quite a few of them anyway, visiting Jason, but I'd never been in a professional capacity.
Yeah. Was there,
So
sorry to cut you off. I'm just really
yeah,
curious. I love that you just made a decisive decision. I think we all get confronted with that, almost the crucible of life. Like we've got to make this huge decision. But when you're talking about that and mention your brother, was that really like, I know I've had moments, I'm actually getting chills thinking about it in my life where life opportunity presented me having to confront certain stuff. Like before you were going, and this was seeing your brother that you love, and I'm so sorry for your loss. I can't imagine that kind of hurt. I'm very close to my older brother. But to come into this same type of setting in a different capacity, was there a lot of emotions or struggle around that? Did you see it as an opportunity, or is it something that didn't really come across as a thought? I was like, I'm coming in here in a professional capacity as opposed to something connected to a negativity of your life.
no, I remember it like it was yesterday. We're talking 2016, so we're talking 8 years ago, and Jason had been dead for by that point maybe 3 4 years.
Mhm.
And not just me, but the rest of my family, we all tried to help Jason. We all tried to help Jason, but ultimately we were unsuccessful because Jason didn't want to help himself. You know, and if somebody doesn't want to help himself, then it doesn't matter how many people you have lined up, and they can have the best intentions and the best resources or whatever. It doesn't matter unless that person wants to help themselves. There was 10 participants taking part, each of them serving a life sentence. And I remember thinking to myself that, if I could help one of them through this program, then that would be a good thing. That would be a result because I wasn't able to help Jason, obviously. So I remember going into the prison with a sense of excitement because I saw it as an opportunity. I saw it as an opportunity to go in here and use something that I'm very passionate about, which is the medium of theatre and the arts and creativity. For me to go in with that, it's almost like I felt a sense of empowerment because when I was visiting Jason in a personal capacity as his brother,
Yeah.
I often felt kind of useless.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was going in as a playwright into that applied theatre project, I felt in control because that's my wheelhouse and I kind of know what I'm talking about. And I felt like I could add value, and it felt like a much more positive and very different experience from visiting Jason.
Yeah. Yeah. When did it really the creation of the drama therapy program, anonymous drama, really start to come together? Did you experience like, 12-step groups, or was there something, what was really the antithesis that it was, prior to that first time really going in or putting the program together as you were visiting prisons, that it was like, because I know for me, um, acting was huge. It was so huge for me in my healing process. Even to be able to, sometimes I'll write little things just to help the story I'm telling myself at the time, to play something out and problem solve. And it's no different than when we were a kid. I mean, how do kids learn? We play. We play. And so for me, still, I'll pop on Star Wars or something, and oh yeah, I'm watching the hero's journey here. Like, Luke went through it too, or whatever it is. Really, where did it come together for you that it was the overall program?
I wish I could take credit. Um, you know, I wish that um, Yeah, I wish I could take credit, but life, this is, regardless whether you're religious or you're spiritual or, whether you even do or don't believe in a higher power, there's just some things that are just very suspicious in terms of how they come about. The idea of it's almost like there's just something in the background that's kind of making, maneuvering things and making shit happen. Because it was looking back on it, it was kind of an accident. It was kind of just a happy accident. The analogy that I often use is, you can imagine like when penicillin was invented, there's like 3 or 4 test tubes, and he's putting stuff in here and he's trying that, and by mistake he puts that one in there and discovers penicillin.
Have you dug into the archives of past Knocking Doors Down podcast episodes? The Knocking Doors Down podcast archive is available to you for free. Check it out. Here's a snippet from when Charlie Sheen was on the podcast.
I think shame and people pleasing are completely interwoven.
Absolutely. I agree 100%, because I know I greatly struggled with that. Still do at times.
Right. And what is shame really? It's us writing a story about how someone's going to interpret or judge us with us having no idea what the outcome of the next moment is.
This episode and so many more in the Knocking Doors Down archive. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumb up, leave a comment, and share with somebody else that you know will get value out of the Knocking Doors Down podcast.
I remember during that very first program, I had a conversation with prison staff, and they intimated a degree of discomfort round about the idea of playwrights and actors and directors going into applied theatre drama type groups in that environment and manoeuvring potentially emotionally charged content, and in some cases even triggering. And I agreed with him, and I remember the conversation, we spoke about it. He wasn't being a dick. I mean, he wasn't giving me a hard time, but we were just having a conversation about the fact that at that time I was a playwright. I didn't have any, specific mental health qualifications or experience, and yet I'm in a room with 10 inmates serving life sentences, and as part of our character and script development, these guys are revealing things that at the time it felt potentially inappropriate, both for me and for them. So I very quickly got the idea from that conversation that the next program, anonymity would be applied, in the sense that, so for example, Jason, if you're a participant in the group and you want to talk about your mum's alcoholism and the impact that had on you as a child, then we will stop you and we will direct you onto one of the group fictional characters' mum's alcoholism and the impact that it had on the fictional character as a child. So everything in the session is done through fictional characters in such a way that nobody in the room knows the difference between what is lived experience or what is fictional for anyone. And that also means that I am not projecting onto you and you are not projecting onto me. So we're like two blank pages. We're just like 2 blank pages in a room working with fictional characters, exploring stuff. And nobody knows the difference between what's real and what's fiction. And that anonymity protocol that was applied very quickly after that conversation, immediately I started to, we have internal and external evaluations, and even being part of delivery teams, I immediately got a sense of there being multiple benefits attached to the introduction of the anonymity in that environment. It creates a very unusual and very unique space.
Yeah, I could only imagine. I mean, as a guy that's, 12-step meetings save my life, and I attend all kinds of different ones. I've often had where individuals share some of their story and they stop, and that's their choice, of course. But I could only imagine the power that it would give them, even if it was just everybody kind of wrote out a two-page dissertation and somebody else read it or played it out or the scenario, and the amount of not only healing but opportunity for conversation that then opens up. I could imagine if somebody's script and then it was acted out or read, and then all of a sudden somebody else is like, wait a minute, these guys that I go and maybe I mean mug, one of them went through what I went through.
Mhm.
They're experiencing the same thing. And
Mhm.
I just know that for me, the arts, it's been more than entertainment. It's storytelling that we've done forever as humans, but it also offers that amazing opportunity for connection. And we all crave connection. We're communal animals, you know? It's what we do. And what a beautiful opportunity to present to people.
Well, I mean, in addition to connection, it's also exploration.
Mm,
And, you know, some of the feedback we've had from, this is not me knocking the fellowship because I don't have any, when it comes to the recovery community, I know there's lots of opinions within the recovery community when it comes to what works and what doesn't work, etc. But I can tell you, um, based on some of the feedback that we've had from our group participants, um, for example, if you're in a fellowship meeting and you share your testimony, quite often our participants talk about the fact that it's almost like a monologue that they just keep delivering and delivering and delivering, and to the extent that it just becomes almost like a performance. And arguably, I mean, what is the truth anyway? When someone tells their testimony, that might be a version of the truth,
mm.
because 10 different people involved in a situation will give you 10 different truths. Um, but this constant re-delivery of the same testimony, for some participants, the feedback that we've had is that they feel a sense of like, in what way am I benefiting from continually just re-delivering the same monologue over and over again? Like you said, it'd be more interesting. Possibly, in fact, it's not fair to say it'd be more interesting because it would be different if there's 10 people in the room and 10 of them write out their testimony in monologue form, and then you mix them up. For
Yeah.
me, as a storyteller, as somebody who develops characters and scripts, that is, I'm more interested in that idea because the environment that's created there is one of true exploration.
Yeah.
Because in that type of situation, nobody knows the difference. If the monologues don't have names on them,
Yeah,
you know.
no, I concur in that. One of my favorite things about When I Still Will, and I do not as regular as I used to, just attend a recovery community meeting, is the sidebar, in the middle or after when conversation can really happen. Because I find that's when you get that sounding board. It'd be like, I'm going to go up, I'm going to do a one-man show, and I'm not going to let anybody see it till opening night. Worst idea. We need that kind of feedback. We need that kind of, like, even if it's, ooh, that part resonated with me, and somebody tells you why. I too grew up in a home of addiction. Was your experience X, Y, and Z? Well, not exactly. Like you said, it's that exploration. And to me, that's the part that I'm incredibly grateful about the path that life has presented for me to go after is I have a very curious mind. I always have, and I always will. And that thing of judgment has gone further to the back, you know? I mean, I remember this guy was sharing a story at a meeting, and a few people, like, went back, and I went forward. And I don't know why I remember that. But I remember just, looking at him, and he said afterwards, "Thank you for being so engaged." And I went, "Well, I have a similar thing, and it opened up the opportunity for dialogue. And now every time I show up to that meeting, first guy, beeline, comes up, smile, hug. It's that opportunity, that exploration, like you said.
And the program has been going 8 years, um, and it's interesting because many different prisons, many different residential and community rehabs, different delivery teams, different participants, but there are some kind of central components that are always the same.
Mm.
So the first one is every single group will develop 3 recurring characters. And the first of those characters is the protagonist, the main character. And the main character represents everybody in the room. So the main character is, an opportunity to, so rather than Jason talking about his mum's alcoholism, let's explore giving the main character's mum alcoholism, and let's explore the impact it had on the main character as a child. And then the second character is the inner critic.
Mm-hmm.
And the inner critic is a constant source of negativity and disruption and all the bad stuff. And then the third recurring character is the mentor. And the inner mentor is the opposite of the critic, a constant source of positivity, encouragement, unconditional love, acceptance, all the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the program runs over 12 to 16 weeks usually, 2 2-hour sessions a week. And in the sessions, the participants supported by the delivery team will be developing these 3 recurring characters. And in doing so, working on various kind of activities and exercises, improvisations, hot seats, and developing monologues and sketches and spoken word. And by week 12 to 16, the group will have their 3 kind of fully formed protagonist, critic, mentor, and they'll have usually a kind of 45 to 60-minute group script consisting of a mixture of monologues, sketches, spoken word, and volunteers from the group will get the opportunity to take part in a rehearsed reading for friends and family and support staff. And those rehearsed readings are, very, very powerful, as you can imagine, because these individuals are not actors. And like I say, it's not compulsory because it's not everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody. It's just, I'm not a performer. So see that thing that you have that drives you to step on the stage or step in front of the camera. I don't have that, but I don't see it as being a kind of shortcoming, because obviously in our industry, the actors get a lot of the spotlight, but there are many, many different roles, all of which are equally as important and valuable as the actor role. So it's not compulsory, it's totally voluntary, but usually if you've got 12 participants, 4 of them are bursting to get on stage, 4 of them, they're not going to do it, it's not their cup of tea, and if they feel any pressure, they're going to not come back to the session. So it's important that they understand that that is not compulsory, and they can just sit in the audience and feel as much ownership over the group script as anybody on stage. And then you've got 4 in the middle who might do it, might not do it, kind of sitting on the fence, give them a bit of support either way. So that's the shape of the program. The shape of the group program is 12 to 16 weeks. Build those 3 recurring characters round about a pre-identified theme. So, for example, if it's a recovery group, the protagonist is in recovery. If it's a prison group, the protagonist is in prison. You build the group script, the monologues, the sketches, the spoken word, and the module concludes with the rehearsed reading for friends, family, support staff. And then we do it again. So basically, these modules just run like trains leaving the station, So one finishes, a new one starts, new participants finishes, new one starts. I recently opened the program up to individuals because I was frustrated by the fact that, if I'm going into a prison that's got 600 inmates and only 10, maybe somewhere between 10 and 20 of them are taking part in the group program, that means there's potentially 580 of them who are not taking part in the program. So I opened up the program in such a way that it could actually be individuals, in their own time, can go through the program. You don't have to be part of a group.
Yeah. Well, how is the approach different with an individual than a group type setting? Is it really just that exploration, maybe just getting them writing?
Well, again, it's not about getting them writing because, we're not a drama group. We're not focused on creative writing. We're not focused on performing. We consider ourselves to be a mental health intervention, a kind of DIY mental health intervention program. That's our kind of focus and priority. It's not about getting them. It's not about getting them writing. But I suppose the biggest difference between the group program and the individual program is the anonymity element, because clearly, if you are on your own doing this work, there's no need for anonymity. The anonymity element is a safeguarding feature which is built into the group program for both the delivery team and the participants to create an environment that is less emotionally charged and less triggering than it would be if the anonymity was not applied. But one of the interesting things about the anonymity is we have been able to so there's a session plan. So every session follows a session plan, and each session usually lasts for 2 hours. Now that step-by-step session plan means that delivery team members can go through an induction and specific training so that they can deliver the program. And one of the things I'm very excited about is, now it's important to say that it's not drama therapy, because drama therapy is its own thing. And when I started this journey kind of back in 2016, I studied psychodrama. I looked into drama therapy. I looked into, the therapeutic, the idea of using drama for therapeutic intent was something that I looked into. Anonymous drama is its own thing. I compare it to drama therapy purely because it's the closest thing that I have for comparison purposes, but it is a different thing. But thanks to the session plan, along with and the anonymity and some other elements, some of these groups are actually delivered by individuals who are lived experienced, but have no specific drama therapy or drama therapy qualifications. So, we've got participants who are delivering, who started the program in residential rehabs or prisons as participants, and then they came back as volunteers, and then they came back as paid delivery team members. And that's just, for me, it's a big thrill to see people who don't have any drama or therapy background able to deliver a drama therapy type program. And one of the reasons that we can do that is thanks to AI. Now, I'm a big fan of AI. And I'm keen on, basically exploring ways that it could be put to use
Yeah.
in terms of, helping us when it comes to the type of work that we do. And one of the things that we do with AI, if you're a lived experience individual, so let's say you're in recovery or you have lived experience of the justice system and you are delivering our program, then, you might be quite scared of trying to develop characters, trying to develop monologues, sketches, spoken word, trying to set up an improvisation scenario or a hot seat scenario. So what we did was we created a GPT via ChatGPT, which basically meant that our delivery team can take some of the work that they're doing in the sessions around about discussion and exploration, etc., and feed it into the GPT and ask for a monologue or a sketch or some spoken word or an improvisation scenario. So it's almost like in their hand, they have got a playwright, a director, a dramaturg, an actor, a poet who can step in and give them, give them some ideas. So the idea is the delivery team asks for something, they get it, and they don't have to use it. They can take it back into the group and they can say, what do we think? Do we want to use this? Do we want to bin it? Do we want to edit it? Because one of the great things about GPT is it doesn't have an ego yet.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future, but right now it's not going to take offence if you put its monologue in the bin.
Yeah.
You know?
I do. I mean, I utilize the tools. I've embraced it. And again, it's that exploration. And sometimes, the AI is giving me some great titles, catchy titles that I wouldn't have come up with, or descriptions for
Yep.
the podcasts, or, there's all this algorithm stuff that it'll kind of help educate me. But like you said, it's got no ego, and I can easily go, yeah, I don't like that word. Backspace, backspace, backspace. I like this word better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the other interesting thing we're doing with AI, which is not the group program, it's the individual program, which is very exciting. So when it goes back to what we were talking about earlier on, like if you're going to come on this program, what I need you to accept as being a possibility, I don't need you to accept that this is true, but I need you to accept that it's possible that there's a conversation going on inside your head 24/7. And the journey that we're going to go on together, regardless whether it's part of the group program or the individual program, we are going to start to explore that conversation. And we're going to start to deconstruct the conversation and look at the different players, the different cast members who make up the conversation, and start to deconstruct some of the chat, because 99% of us don't even know that conversation exists.
Mm-hmm.
But to be part of this program, you really have to, like I say, you don't have to accept it as being true, but you have to be open-minded to it being a possibility. You don't have to be religious, although if you are, that's fine. You don't have to be spiritual, although if you are, that's fine. You could be agnostic, you could be atheist, doesn't matter. Come into the program, work on the exploration of that conversation, deconstruct it, identify the critic, identify the negative chat, and start to develop a relationship with your mentor when you are struggling, in the same way that you are bombarded by negative chat constantly. We all have within us the ability to make contact with and develop a relationship with our inner mentors. And that inner mentor is your biggest fan, your champion, constant source of love, compassion, and unconditional love and acceptance, regardless whether you're religious, spiritual, agnostic, or atheist, makes no difference. And the AI use within the program for individuals is mind blowing in terms of the possibilities, because individuals going through the program, provided they're not in prison or in a residential rehab, because they don't have access to technology. People who have access to technology, so for example, people in recovery in the community, they get the link to the GPT, and they can actually have a conversation with their mentor, because we have configured the GPT in such a way that it will respond to you in the way that we would expect our biggest fan, champion, constant source of love and compassion to respond to us. So I've got it. I mean, I've got it on my phone, and I will be going through the day, and I'll just check in. I'll just be like, you don't even have to type it. You can just press the microphone button. You can speak into the GPT. You can say, I am struggling today for these reasons. I'm feeling shit for reason 1, 2, 3, 4, and then press the button. The response comes back, and you don't even have to read it. You can press the read aloud button, and you can also configure whether it's male, female, and you configure the accent, whether it's an American accent or an English accent, and your mentor will speak back to you and will give you the type of encouragement that you would expect your mentor to give you. Because see in a recovery context, and this is not just recovery, this is everything.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, right? So the conversation that we talk about, basically everything in your life. So everybody you know, or every new person that you meet, everything, like we say, alcohol, drugs, sugar, money, sex, status, fitness, whatever it is, everything comes with the chat. So this is good, this is bad, this is indifferent, whatever. Now, technically, when you think about it, like if you put a glass of wine or a pint of beer on the table right now, and me and you are sitting here, the only thing that's different is the conversation going on inside both our heads. The alcohol is the same.
All right.
That's the key. The key is the conversation. It's not the alcohol. It's like, what is the conversation that's going on inside someone's head relating to alcohol, as an example? Because it's the same conversation regardless of the content.
Yeah.
There's different conversations going on, but ultimately the operating system inside all of this is inside the operating system.
Wow. No, I'm thinking about that scenario right now. Let's say I come to Scotland, meet you. That's the thing. We go to a pub, no big deal. Doesn't bother me anymore. But simply enough is that it'd be like, oh, well, I don't drink. It doesn't apply to me. But my story wasn't always that. It was, oh my God, I got to fight this off to drink. This is a trigger moment or whatever it is. And it's just not the case anymore because the story has changed.
But you've still got a conversation going on.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So the point is, there is always a conversation.
Yeah.
Right. So what you've done is, you've managed to intervene. You've managed to intervene in a way that you were able to reconstruct the conversation in such a way that it's not going to fuck your life up.
Yeah.
But if you look at, listen, see, at the end of the day, in the morning when I get out of my bed, I am driven by two numbers. There are two numbers that are at the top of my head. Number one is the alcohol and drug death rate. So, and number two is the offending and reoffending rate. Because so much of our program is delivered in the recovery space and in the justice space, those two numbers are my drivers. But unfortunately, when it comes to the recovery space, my mum's been sober for 25 years and she is very much in the minority. The vast majority of people who struggle with alcohol and drug addiction are going to die like Jason.
Yeah.
That's just the sad reality of the situation. So unfortunately, they were engaged in a conversation which killed them.
Yeah.
And that is, that's how serious it is. This conversation that's going on in the background, this fucking operating system inside which, this kind of, this, whatever kind of reality this is that we are living inside these individual or collective operating systems. Unfortunately, it is constructed in such a way that it is trying to kill us.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for sharing all that, Mark, and what you do, because the beauty that I'm hearing out of Anonymous Drama too is living proof of neuroplasticity, that we can change the stories, that we can change the way we think. And there is nothing harder, especially when it's a young person. I mean, I've been in meetings with people that they're just after their 18th birthday and they're seeking recovery, and they don't believe that they can change that story that they tell themselves about themselves, that they are so attached to. And it's disheartening. It's sad. It really is. It's heartbreaking. And yeah, I don't know how many meetings I've gone into, asked where so-and-so is, and said, "Oh, you didn't hear?" No, they died of a fentanyl overdose the other day. And it's just, or incarceration. That's happened too. Hey, what happened to so-and-so? Well, they went back out, and so much crime and incarceration is around addiction. They didn't have the money, figured they didn't need to rob the store to get the money to buy their whatever, insert, addiction here. Yeah. So thank you for the work that you do and all the people that you work with. I don't know. I was going to ask next, what's the reach of Anonymous Drama? Are you just in Scotland, around the UK? Because I think this is something that we need to try to get over here in the States for sure.
Well, I mean, at the moment, the focus is very much Scotland and the UK. I mean, they've been running since 2016 in Scotland. I would like to see the programme running in every UK prison and every UK residential rehab. But obviously, we've got work to do. In terms of internationally, from my point of view, I've not done, most of the podcasts I've done have been UK podcasts. So who knows? Someone may be listening or watching to your podcast who either works in or has an interest in the recovery of justice space, and makes contact with me via any of my social media channels. And we can talk about, getting American anonymous drama groups up and running, either prisons, residential rehabs, community rehabs, or even the individual program. Anybody who's listening to this, you don't have to be in recovery and you don't have to be in the justice system to get involved in a kind of mental health, a DIY mental health intervention program, which is designed to move you away from that critique with the conversation and move you toward developing a relationship with your inner mentor. Because if you are even 1% to 5% successful in that endeavor, your life will be changed.
Yes, sir. If people do want to get a hold of you, what's the best way? Please let them know before we jump into the fun part. We're going to do some random questions here in a second, but what's the easiest way to probably make contact with you?
Any social media platform, the usual: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc.
All right. Well, I'll make sure I'll get all the links in the podcast description so people can reach. I'm going to reach out. I want to keep the conversation going after this, but
Jason, get on the program. Get on the program for individuals.
yeah.
I'll get you an access code. You can get into the program. You can start going through that. You know, starting to deconstruct that conversation and get some distance between you and the critique, and develop a relationship with the mentor, and have some fun with the GPT. Start having some conversations with your mentor, because those conversations are mind blowing.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I'd appreciate it. Thank you. All right. This is where I switch to some fun, random questions. As I call for the shits and giggles section, then I'll ask you for some final thoughts, words of encouragement. Um, Here's a fun one. This is a good one to start. Is there a book you've read or TV show or movie recently that you've really enjoyed, and what was your biggest takeaway from it?
Wow. Wow. I think if I was to say book, I would say there's a book called The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand.
Hmm.
And that book, possibly more than any other, has changed my life. I mean, I think I've read it 4 or 5 times. Um, and it's interesting actually, because I'm a big fan of podcasts. You know,
Hmm.
before I was on a podcast, I mean, I think probably like a lot of people, Joe Rogan was my gateway drug. I started getting into Joe Rogan, and then I was just like down a rabbit hole and listening to all sorts of podcasts. But it was on a Joe Rogan podcast that there was a guy called friend of his, stand-up comedian Ari, I think his name is. Can't remember
Yeah.
his surname.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall,
Um,
but
stand-up comedian friend of Joe Rogan's called Ari something, and he spoke about the Fountainhead and the impact that it had on him, um, as a stand-up comedian. Because basically, the gist of it is, when it comes to measuring success, whether you're an actor, a writer, a stand-up comedian, an architect, like the protagonist in the book, Howard Rourke is an architect. Um, the way that book unfolds, by the time you're finished with it, you're able to, in my opinion, develop a better relationship with how you measure and define success.
mm, yeah, which is, I don't know about there. Everybody thinks the success is the cars, the money, and I've known some very, very wealthy people that are incredibly lonely and incredibly empty, and
Yeah.
suffering.
Right.
But
But unsurprisingly, I would say that's because of the conversation that they're engaged in.
mhm.
And I mean, this is the thing. See, when it comes to the conversation that's going on inside our heads, um, it doesn't. I mean, you could have somebody's got $100 million in the bank, but you know, they they know a guy who's a billionaire, and they're pissed off by the fact this guy's a billionaire, and you know, they've not got as much money, and so they've got 100 million, but they're still pissed off. In fact, is a billionaire is a billionaire 100 million or 1,000 million?
Hundred, a hundred million, right? Or is it
Right.
10,
Okay.
10, 100 million? I can't.
Because that would be 1,000 million.
It's a, it's a lot.
It's a lot of money. Yeah,
Yeah, only time I've seen billions is at the beach, right? Pebbles of sand.
yeah.
Um, all right. Do you have any pet peeves? Things that annoy you, just get to you?
Jesus, things are annoying me. Wow. Um, so much. You know, like I say, you know, from the conversation that's going on inside my head, 24/7, both asleep and awake. There's constantly things that are pissing me off. Um, I can't think of anything specific at the moment of something that pisses me off.
That's a good thing.
other than just a general sense of dissatisfaction. Yeah.
What's the best gift you ever received?
The best gift I've ever received. Um, I'll tell you what, my partner organised a nice surprise birthday celebration for me a couple of years ago. We went to like a log cabin in the country, and I thought it was just us and the kids. And when we got there, um, we're sitting we're sitting in the room, and the door, the door chapped, door opened, and it was friends. And then she would say, "That's it, there's nobody else coming." And then 20 minutes later, the door would go again. It was more friends, and then 20 minutes later, more friends. So, I would say, off the top of my head, that's probably the best gift that I've had.
Oh, that's beautiful. All right, one last random question. People seem to like this one. If you could have dinner with any one person, living or not, who would it be?
But I mean, I was going to say Ayn Rand because of the Fountainhead. Um, but actually, when I was writing, obviously, the Coconut Badger, the novel, was the very first thing that I wrote, and it was a novel. Um, and just like when I wrote my first stage play, I went to a lot of theatre. When I wrote my first screenplay, I watched a lot of films. And when I wrote my first novel, all I was doing was reading novels. And I actually, there's a thing called, I think it's called the Modern Library. You can find it on Google, and it's like um, the top 100 novels of the 20th century. And I started at number 100, and I was working my way back. I think I got to number like 75 or 70. I think I read about 25 or 30 of those novels. Um, but I always said that my favourite author living was a British writer called Ian McEwan.
Hmm.
And my favourite author dead was George Orwell. So I would probably say George Orwell.
Yeah. No, yeah, I like George Orwell. For me, if I was to go with an author, it'd be Jules Verne. I've always loved sci-fi. I went back and redid 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea not that long ago, and it was like, wow, this is so much better than when I was a kid and read it. I understand so much more and different perspective, and just that kind of beauty of, the exploration they did of possibilities.
Mm-hmm. That's the
Oh,
thing with sci-fi. I mean, you hear people talking about they are into it and they're not into it, but when it comes to genres, ultimately it doesn't matter what the genre is. Those central components that they all have in common when it comes to storytelling. I mean, it's either good storytelling or it's not. And if it's good storytelling, it kind of doesn't matter what the genre is. You're going to dig it
yeah. Yeah.
if you give yourself permission to.
Yes, sir. Mark, this is where I like to give the opportunity for some final thoughts. Just anyone that's struggling out there, maybe some advice, knowledge, wisdom from your life experience and the work you're doing.
I would say, make contact. Like if the program sounds of interest, make contact via Mark MacNicol socials, and I'll get you hooked up on the individual program. Or if of interest, if you work in a prison or a residential rehab or a community rehab, then reach out and I can introduce you to the group program. Um, Other than that, I've always been like a big inspiration for the program is a lady called Sherry Huber, who's
Mm.
based in the US. And she is someone who practices Zen self awareness practice. And the program is obviously different, but it is influenced by Sherry's teachings. And she was probably the first person who introduced me to the concept of having an inner mentor inside. So anybody who's struggling um, could do a lot worse than find. I think her website is livingcompassion.org or livingcompassion.net. if you put Sherry Huber into Google, you will find her, CHERIHUBER. And she's got on her website, she's got loads of stuff. She's got a kind of weekly phone-in show, books, audio books, loads of practice opportunities. So have a look at Sherry's stuff.
Will do.
But
Mark?
the important thing is do something.
Yes.
For fuck's sake. Do something. Don't die.
Yeah. Yes,
Don't
sir.
die.
Hey, thank you very much for your time. This has been a real pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. We'll have to do it again sometime. But for all you listening or watching, please hit that subscribe button. If it's YouTube, leave a comment in the video. Mark will see these and I'll be sharing with him. And remember, no outside solutions to inside problems, and keep knocking doors down.